Tournaments are not about competing. They're not about winning, dear strangers online. Tournaments are about stories, and that's what we take from them. When I think about the 2006 World Cup, I don't remember who won the grand title. I remember Zidane headbutting Materazzi out of the complete loop. When I think about the 2005 Piston Cup, I couldn't care less about that weird green car that won. All I remember is Lightning McQueen helping the king finalize his final race. This is what moves us and engages audiences. Stories. Last month, the 2024 Pokémon World Championships took place, and in my last video, I introduced some often overlooked, queer stories that you could watch happening in Worlds. Many other stories were told throughout the weekend, and we can learn so much from them. There are as many stories as there are competitors, stories of glory, of love, of community, but also of cheating, conflict, and controversy. Today, I want to share with you 4 of them. Stories that I believe paint a very good picture of what competitive Pokemon is today, but that can also point a path forward. Because even though this was the biggest Worlds ever, there are still some obstacles to face. There's a question on the back of my head that I can't help but struggle against. Why isn't competitive Pokemon even more popular yet? I mean, don't get me wrong, it is popular. Every year we have more players joining, the budget is increasing and events are getting bolder and fancier, but still, it's Pokemon. The highest grossing media franchise in the world. Pokemon Worlds should be much bigger than a lot of other tournaments out there. There's no way this competition is that inaccessible, right? It's not as if there isn't a fan base there. I sound like a broken record talking about Wolfey in every single opportunity I have, but look at Wolfe Glick's channel. Dude is pulling 2 million views on 2-hour-long videos that do intrinsic strategic breakdowns, team explanations, and go detail by detail through matches. There is clearly an interested audience in competitive Pokemon. The Pokemon YouTube channel has 6 million subscribers. Worlds should be the biggest thing ever, but still, 30,000 people showed up to watch the finals live. That's 0.5% of Pokemon subscribers. What's stopping people from enjoying VGC? I'm bringing 4 stories from Worlds 2024 for you today, dear stranger online. Stories of friendship, stories of wolves, stories of mothers, and stories of champions. Looking back at the most significant moments from this year's competition helps us understand what people resonate with. And maybe they can show us what's missing for fans to engage even more with these events. Maybe we can spot something in common with stories that move us. But before we start, YouTuber moment, I won't take long. Hi, I'm Ceribelli. I started this channel a few months ago and I feel extremely privileged to have alongside me an incredible community of strangers online who are also interested in queer, marginal conversations about things we love. I am not sponsored and I don't have a Patreon, but I'm still figuring out the path forward for this little channel, and I wanted to invite you to come along. Like, subscribe, do what you usually do to help me sail the deep and treacherous waters of the YouTube algorithm. But moving on to our first story, the story of friendship, I need to talk about Pachirisu. In 2014, Sejun Park became the champion of Pokemon Worlds, and for some reason, we can't stop talking about it ever since. Some people on the mental health website call it, degradingly, Pachirisu discourse, and I'm sorry to let you know that this video is, in fact, a little bit of Pachirisu discourse, among some other things. But Pachirisu discourse is, in my opinion, a perfect picture of what the path forward for competitive Pokemon could be. Let me paint the scenario for you. VGC in 2014. These championships had started to move away from their infancy into more well-established events. Ray Rizzo had won his 3rd title 2 years prior, and the Japan-US supremacy over VGC was starting to fade away. The previous year saw an Italian champion, and the 2014 final was between South Korean Sejun Park and Jody Azzarelli from the USA. This was the first championship played in Pokemon X and Y, so you know what that means. Incredibly powerful Mega Pokemon were dominating the scene. Mega Kangaskhans with Parental Bond were everywhere, as well as Mega Gengars to counter them. I cannot understate how broken Kangaskhan was in X and Y, with an ability that allowed it to attack twice and access to Power Up Punch. Honestly, a nightmare. And out of all of these heavy hitters, Sejun Park was the only player who decided to bring a Pachirisu to the tournament. and here we are, still talking about it to this day. Yes, it was a meta choice. Yes, VGC people in the comment section will remind me to death that Sejun did not bring Pachirisu because it was his friend or his favorite Pokemon. He brought it because, with access to Follow Me and Volt Absorb, it offered perfect support to shield his Mega Gyarados from electric attacks. Also, Super Fang is super broken. Gyarados might have been the star of the team, but the story was never Gyarados won the 2014 Worlds. The Pokemon that has been featured in multiple trailers, documentaries by the Pokemon Company, and countless YouTube videos about winning with your favorites has been Pachirisu. And it was probably, to this day, the most important moment ever in competitive Pokemon. Cut to 10 years later, 2024, Sejun Park returned to the World Championships, and on day 1, he played on stream against Aaron Cybertron Zhang. This matchup is in itself insane, because Aaron is a very well-known caster in competitive Pokemon, an incredibly popular voice online and on YouTube about VGC. He was going for his first tournament in years after becoming a caster, and he has a huge fanbase rooting for him to win the entire thing. And in day 1, on the second round of the competition, he goes against the 2014 champion, who has also not competed in VGC World since he won his title. And guess which Pokemon he brought on his team?
You're freed up with that Sucker Punch to deal that way more effectively, but here it is, the Pachirisu out onto the field.
And again, after 10 years, Pachirisu hit the field and the crowd screamed. It was thrilling and exciting seeing the little Sinnoh Pika clone there again. Pachirisu took over the trending topics and fan art started flooding through, and it was probably the most talked about moment of the entire tournament. Why does a single off-meta Pokemon choice like that moves us so much? I personally think that the biggest challenge competitive Pokemon has, and why so many casual players and fans of the series have difficulties in enjoying it for what it is how far VGC is from the team and messaging of Pokemon as a whole. Pokemon has always been a very accessible series about self-expression, about friendship, and being the very best with your friends next to you. Rivals and evil teams only treated Pokemon as tools to battle, and that's why they lost. They never had what you, the protagonist, had, a real bond with their Pokemon. And that means being able to win with your favorites. That happens with me in the games all the time when I beat the Pokemon League with an unevolved Fuecoco, and it happened to Ash becoming the world champion with his best friend Pikachu. Pokemon fans are told, and a trigger alert to VGC fans, but Karen quote incoming, that strong Pokemon, weak Pokemon, that is only the selfish perception of people. Truly skilled trainers should try to win with their favorites. And that often is the main message people get out of this entire series. Then, little Timmy walks into competitive and sees there's absolutely no way that their favorite can stand a chance against the sea of Urshifus and Landros, and stop commenting, we all know Landros is not your favorite Pokemon, you can stop with that. It is not accessible to casual fans, and there is an undeniable entry barrier. There is little space for improvisation and team building, and the player's self-expression is limited. Keeping the parallel with the anime, it's the same feeling as when Ash reached the Sinnoh League after overcoming challenges and creating strong bonds with his Pokemon, only to get steamrolled by a random emo dude with a Darkrai and a Latios. In VGC, Pokemon feel less like companions and more like tools to win. Until they don't. It doesn't matter if Pachirisu was Sejun's meta choice or not. What matters is that him just being there is by itself an incredible story. That's why it's captivating, and that's why after 10 years it was one of the most talked about moments of this year's entire tournament. Not the top cut, not the meta standouts, but the little Pachirisu that could, who stood up against Salamence and Garchomps and won like no one ever was. The inspiration for me to tell this story came from this tweet from Taco that passed through my timeline and discusses exactly this, and I fully agree with it. Taco wrote, I can't stress enough that one of the most celebrated and talked about parts of the Pokemon World Championships was someone who didn't even make top 8, because they, at least partially, played with a favorite. There's definitely a takeaway in there somewhere. As annoyed as many competitors are at the idea, there's obviously merit to this after trending for 2 or 3 days straight. I keep bringing it up, but this really does seem like the key to breaking containment and helping Pokemon become more spectator-friendly. This sort of reaction is rare. I know some players get really defensive around this conversation, and I fully understand why. I will reinforce here what I said before. This is not a critique of VGC players. They are playing the meta, which is important, and they should do it to win. Don't feel like I'm vouching for everyone to walk into an international tournament bringing their Charmanders and Spindas, because I'm not. This is more directed at the Pokemon Company, a cry for help, if you will. A plea to look into rebalancing this meta. To make it even more diverse, to make more Pokemon viable in fun and effective strategies. The hidden abilities were a great step in repurposing old Pokemon that were being forgotten away. And new items in the style of Eviolite and Light Ball can be a great idea to make even more Pokemon viable in these high-level battles. To align VGC to the message of the entire series, that everyone can win with their favorites, the meta needs first to include. That's what I think the Pachirisu story tells us and what we can learn from it. But well, the meta is not going to change tomorrow, and there are definitely other stories about the meta we can tell from Worlds 2024. About one player who stopped trying to avoid the metagame and fully embraced it, even using Pokemon that were far from their favorites. But that choice in itself created a bond and a story. Well, I'm trying to be all poetic and call it a story of wolves, but who am I kidding? You expected this, how can I not? Could I even write this video without talking about it? Let's talk about Wolfey. In 2024, Wolfey has basically the anti-Pachirisu story. Wolfey tried to win with his least favorite Pokemon. I am not going to introduce Wolfe Glick in this video because almost 70% of you are subscribed to his channel, but quickly, 2016 World Champion, poster boy for VGC in the West, YouTube personality, Tyrannidrill shipper. Not only is his personal goal to make competitive Pokemon more accessible, Wolfey is always trying to have a Pachirisu moment as well. He's known for always trying to think outside of the box and bringing underrepresented Pokemon and unconventional strategies to win tournaments, being famous for his use of Perish Trap, for example. But this year, he decided it was a year for the Wolves. He decided he was going to build the strongest, most meta-friendly team, even if it meant playing with Pokemon that he hated. Specifically, one Pokemon. Incineroar, the stupid cat, which he also named the best Pokemon ever and made a half-an-hour video about it. Wolfey's enemies to lovers saga with Incineroar was such an interesting story for fans that if you go to any of his videos, the most voted comment will often be how long did it take for him to mention Incineroar. And after having embraced the fact that to win Worlds he would have to bring the best Pokemon of all time with him, Wolfey went straight into the game. It was a no selfie weekend for Wolfe Glick, except for the dozens that appeared in my timeline. It was time for Intimidate, Fake Outs, and Parting Shot. On day one, Wolfey and Incineroar were on fire. They didn't even appear on stream, but the news that kept coming from them was unbelievable. Wolfey didn't lose a single game. And when I say a single match, I mean a single match. VGC battles are best of 3, and he won 2-0 in every single one of them. Literally unheard of in competitive Pokemon history, let alone at Worlds. Wolfe Glick made the most meta-friendly team, and for that he was highly rewarded. Wolfey finished day 1 undefeated. Day 2 came along and Wolfey was on TV now. I reacted to his live match on stream and the man wouldn't even blink. Thinking over every single move, he made 2 basically perfect games. Chet and I even thought he must have cheated by bringing 2 Incineroars to the match, which was a glitch from the transmission, but he was winning 16-0 at this point, so you might even believe it. Everybody was extremely hyped because there was no one that could stop Wolfey. Until someone did. He lost to the Italian Marco Silva, and then lost again to the Chilean Diego Ferreira, which we will talk about in a second. What was a perfect performance for the first 9 rounds stopped with 3 losses in a row. All of a sudden, all of the blue. That's the problem of winning streaks. They don't really matter. All you need is 2 mistakes and you're out. And the internet was devastated because Wolfey ended up in top 32. I might have jinxed it a little bit and I want to formally apologize here, but that's really not the point.
Undefeated. Not even a single game dropped.
That's what I said, Sierra. His
caliber of trainers here, and here Ruby.
I don't wanna jinx it. I have something I wanna say, but I don't wanna jinx it. Okay, I will say something. Top 32 is an incredible result, but it was supposed to be a year for Wolves, right? It left a bittersweet feeling. Everyone was rooting for the title, but all this drama, the choice to use Incineroar reluctantly, and get incredible results out of it, resulted in a story. An enemies to lovers story, if you will. Incineroar became a symbol for Wolfe Glick, and whenever he was mentioned anywhere, Incineroar comments would start coming through. The official Pokemon coverage was making jokes about it and putting Incineroar plushies everywhere in different pictures. You can check their channels. Wolfey turned what was simply a meta choice into a narrative that we can relate to. He might have not won the trophy, but the winning streak that Incineroar gave him was one of the most memorable moments from the championships. And I believe that there is a lot to learn and to be proud of. 2024 is always there, and you can be sure of two things. The wolf and the cat will be there again. I talked a lot about accessibility in the last two stories, about the meta needing to be more accessible for casual players, and about the work Wolfey does to break down more complicated aspects of it. And I really believe that is the path forward for this game to grow. But accessibility doesn't only mean having a more accessible meta or explaining strategies in 2-hour-long YouTube videos. Accessibility also means being able to play, regardless of who you are or where you come from. There were no players from Africa or the Middle East attending Worlds in 2024, and even players who had classified had difficulties attending because of very strict US visa policies if you have a specific passport. And this can be extremely cruel in what will be the most heartbreaking story I'll tell today. The story of mothers is Olivo's story. Different from the other stories I told today, this one starts with me. I was on Twitter and I saw this message by Olivo, who I didn't really know back then because, and sorry for this, I'm not super well versed in Pokemon Unite. But he is a player from the team DreamX Esports who would be representing Brazil, if you're gonna ask, it's my country, in Worlds, if not for a small problem. All three of them had their visa to enter the US denied. If I, as a Latin American citizen, want to go to the US for a quick trip, I need first to spend a lot of money and wait a long time, months, in a queue for a visa interview. I will sit in front of a US consulate employee whose goal is to identify if I am a good tourist or if I'm secretly plotting to stay illegally in the best country on the planet to steal jobs from hard-working US citizens. And this is a judgment based purely on vibes, and disproportionately weaponized against Latin people of color. The consulate employee has the final say on whether you get your visa, and their decision doesn't need any explanation. Olivo had already had this visa denied once, and he showed up to the second interview with the entire team holding a letter from the Pokemon company itself. Olivo had a pregnant wife who wouldn't be flying with him, and he had for the past few years been taking care of his mother, ill with late-stage cancer. Either way, the employee laughed in their faces and said, "Not today." Maybe Olivo would abandon his newborn daughter to illegally migrate to the US, right? You never know. The visa rejection a month before the tournament, which the team fought so hard to qualify for, hit them all like a colossal, and they all went to Twitter to vent. I saw this tweet, and it was, unfortunately, a story that I knew way too well. My platform in Brazil was not big enough that I could do something about it, but I shared the story and contacted a few Brazilian creators that have a much bigger network than me, such as Kaká and Vida de Treinador, and they were happy to help in sharing as well. Their help was fundamentally important, and we managed to make a lot of noise around the situation, including YouTube videos with hundreds of thousands of views. Olivo and the team managed to get a third and final emergency visa meeting in another city, which finally got approved. And after all this unnecessary struggle and fighting and rebooking and trips, they took 3 connections to land in Honolulu. But, as I said, Olivo's mom was very ill. And as Olivo landed in Hawaii, he saw some missed calls from his wife, and he already knew what it meant. His mom had passed away while he was on the air. And when I talk about accessibility, I'm really asking, do we need to put people through all these struggles just to play? People that are already facing unimaginable challenges in their personal lives. Should just going to the tournament you already classified be so difficult? The US is known for having one of the most unfriendly border policies on the planet, and for certain passports it's outright impossible to get there. There are so many places on Arcea's green earth that do not demand visas for short stays. If we want to make it a worldwide event, how can it be more difficult for people with the wrong passport? Hosting an event there every now and then, like, I fully get it, but seriously? 16 times? I didn't even know about Olivo's mom when I shared the tweet. I only heard this story after this article was published in a famous Brazilian gaming website. Oliva said that it was very difficult for me because I spent those 2 years with her, taking care of her, and then the moment I left, people said it was as if she was just waiting for me to go. And I spoke to him, and it was honestly a wonderful time for the entire team. They made friends, they got to know a place they had never been to. The entire team finished up in 9th place in Worlds, which was incredible. Olivo got a freaking snorkeling Pikachu tattoo. It was the trip of a lifetime. As I said before, these events are really, really incredible, and I really want to try and participate in the future, but it should be for everyone, because Pokemon is for everyone. And it definitely shouldn't be this hard. Olivo told me that all of these things happening at the same time made him way more anxious about the competition than what was necessary. And that we are aware that we could have performed much better in Worlds if we had spent more time training, rather than traveling from city to city and worrying about getting our visas sorted out. I'm leaving Olivo's socials in the description of this video if you want to connect with him, as we move to our final story. I started this video by saying that there are some stories that we remember more than the story of champions, but I don't think it needs to be this way. When Luca Ceribelli became the second Italian to win the world with a sky plume in his head and no Gurpon on the field, I was shocked I could not find a single interview with him on YouTube. And I couldn't let that be, so I DM'd Luca. I mean, he had just returned from a 20-hour flight from Hawaii and had a lot of work to catch up on, so unfortunately I don't have a full-blown interview to show you here, but as with the rest of this video, I have a little story, a little glimpse of who the world champion of 2024 is. A threatening electric serpent takes down Iron Gender, the non-binary Pokemon. As Pelipper looks up at the 2 legendary Pokemon, there is nothing it can do. It forfeits, and Luca jumps into the arms of his friends, of the Italian community. They couldn't contain the joy of having their friend as world champion and partied all night long, singing Pokemon songs until the karaoke bar closed and kicked them all out. I talked to Luca about his team, and like many champions before him, like Ray Rizzo, he took inspiration when team building from Japanese players and then gave his own spin to it. That being said, it does look like he grew a special affection for Ogerpon, which I love, and gave us quite a few photos of the tour this world champion Pokemon has made in the following days after the title. To Luca, his friends were always the most important part of the road to the championship. After winning, he made a thread telling his 7-year competitive story. Luca wrote, "My journey has seen notable highs and terrible lows, but I could always lean on the amazing people I am glad to call friends of mine. I would have never gotten this far without them, who believed in me more than I believed in myself," and proceeded to thank all of his friends and family. When I asked him if he had any messages for new players trying to look into starting VGC, Luca told me that big events like Worlds or Internationals are a wonderful opportunity to get to know people from all over the world. Lately, there has been an increase in open invite hangouts where anyone can come and socialize, which I think is very cool and helps get the community to know each other better. As a whole, I feel like events are on the right path to be welcoming to all people, regardless of age, gender, identity, etc. But with so many people competing, there is bound to be some negativity around, so I don't feel we are there yet. Regardless, I feel like the good things outweigh the cons, so I suggest to anyone to attend events. I know some Italian Pokemon channels are reaching out to Luca, and there will be more material about him, much more detailed than this video, but honestly, this is also a call out for us to go follow some other VGC players. I really like Wolfey as well, but what this championship was for me, more than anything, was a showcase of how many more incredible players are out there, like Luca. A person who, yes, is the world champion, but most importantly, is just a boy who likes Pokemon. So similar to many of us. Luca's final message was, "Now, where do we even go? I never thought I would have to think about it. I don't think winning Worlds made me better of a player than Saturday. I am still far from the level I want to be, and I will keep on improving as much as I can. Honolulu won't be the end of my journey." So after all these stories, let's finally go back to the first question. Why isn't competitive Pokemon more popular? I personally think it's a matter of time. These events are getting bigger and bigger, and the community who has long given more attention to single-player formats are now turning to VGC as a way that they can also play this game in a high level. The Blueberry Academy DLC with double battles and trick room strats is proof that the Pokemon Company is trying to bridge the gap between game and competition, and making this playstyle even more accessible. There are, of course, some adjustments that I think we can make to get there. Be it embracing Pachirisu discourse while at the same time accepting we sometimes have to play the meta. But more than anything, realizing this game is a source of incredible stories. These events can and should be more accessible, yes, but I'm sure that the Hall of Fame of Pokemon will have players from even more nationalities in the future. Be it Italy, Japan, the US, Latin America, or hopefully Africa and the Middle East too. If the message from the Pokemon games is that any kid can be the very best like no one ever was, that needs to be the message from the Pokemon World Championships too. And I'm sure we'll get there. I promise to keep an eye and to do my best to keep highlighting marginal stories and introducing you to new players you might have not known before. Speaking of which, what the hell, since you have watched it this far, I will give you a 5th and bonus mini story, dear stranger online. In my last video, I basically spoke for 20 minutes about how cool it would be to have a queer world champion, and if you agree with me, I think you'll like this one. The story of the 5th best player in the world, the guy that beat Wolfe Glick and had me shouting "Chi Chi Chi, Le live on stream, Diego Ferreira. Diego showed up on stream with us against Antonio Sanchez sporting a Wellspring Ogerpon in DD Trick Room team. I don't think I said this before, but let me do it now. This is a channel that loves Ogerpon, okay? Honestly, I really wanted to see Historical playing on the Trick Room, but he didn't use it during the stream. Regardless, the battle was electrifying, chat was biting their nails, and Diego won it amazingly. At this point, we were all happy because a Latino player had won, and we dig that. But we didn't really know much about him. It was only in the interview after the match that Diego said this, and my chat, filled with queer people, just went crazy.
Friends and family at home.
Yeah, so many people. So yeah, so my friends, my Chilean friends that are supporting me there, my boyfriend that is watching me as well, and he always supports me.
Once again, what do we have? Openly thanking a boyfriend? Queer love live on the Pokemon stream, right? This just reinforces once again the entire point of my last video about how queer-friendly these tournaments are, and it is always incredible to see LGBT competitors playing at such high level, literally being the 5th best player in the world. This is also accessibility, and I also believe it is a really important step towards making competitive Pokemon even more popular. Thanks a lot, Diego, for playing it so well and reaching where you reached. Even when people doubted that you could get this far with Imprisoned Calyrex, you went there and did it. Dear strangers online, I'm so excited for 2025 already.